So, good morning, students. Today we are going to move to the second part of adrenal gland on the adrenal cortex. Now we will quickly revise what we had studied in our first lecture on adrenal cortex, and then we will connect it to the second part. So let us begin with today's lecture. Now, as you know, there are two suprarenal glands, one on the superior aspect of each kidney. Outer is the cortex, inner is the medulla. Cortex is mainly concerned with secretion of steroid, while medulla is concerned with secretion of catecholamines. We also saw how what are the three layers of adrenal cortex: glomerulosa, the middle fasciculata, as well as the reticularis. We had also seen that glomerulosa is mainly concerned with secretion of mineralocorticoids, while fasciculata is mainly concerned with secretion of glucocorticoids, also to some extent androgens, but mainly glucocorticoids, while reticularis is mainly concerned with secretion of adrenal androgens. We had also seen what are the various types and the classification of mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and androgens. We had also seen the pathway for synthesis of steroid hormones by adrenal cortex. As far as today's lecture is concerned, remember this enzyme 11 beta hydroxylase, which is essential for conversion of deoxycorticosterone to corticosterone and also for conversion of 11 deoxycortisol to cortisol. We had also seen the last lecture, which are the various physiological actions of aldosterone, how it causes sodium absorption coupled with potassium excretion and also coupled with hydrogen excretion in conditions of acidosis. It causes reabsorption of sodium from, say, fluids in the GIT, sweat glands, salivary glands. It acts on hypothalamus to increase the thirst. All in all, it increases the ECF volume, leading to increase in the blood pressure. We had also seen how the nuclear mechanism of aldosterone takes place and leading to the formation of proteins like sodium potassium ATPase in the basolateral membrane of renal tubular cells. We had also seen about the regulation of secretion of aldosterone, that potassium is the main, any increase in serum potassium is the main stimulus. Also, via renin angiotensin mechanism, this regulation of secretion of aldosterone is carried out. Also, via this flow chart, we had seen how these various mechanisms lead to the secretion of aldosterone. We had seen the synthesis and secretion of ACTH, that when the synthesis of ACTH increases, the synthesis of this POMC, that is pro-opiomelanocortin, also increases, and simultaneously the other products like MSH, beta lipoprotein, and beta endorphin, they also increase whenever there is an increase in the ACTH. Now, in physiological actions, we had seen different actions, and in pharmacological doses also, we had seen different actions of glucocorticoids. So, we had seen that the primary effect on carbohydrate metabolism was gluconeogenesis, also conversion of amino acids to glucose, mobilization of amino acids from extrahepatic tissue. There is an increase in the glycogen storage in the liver. There is decreased utilization of glucose by the tissues because of, say, insulin resistance, and this leads to the condition known as adrenal diabetes. We had also seen the effect on the protein metabolism, how the basal levels are essential for various activities, while excess levels can cause increase in protein catabolism as well as inhibition of protein synthesis. Also, we had seen the effect on the fat metabolism, how it causes lipolysis and redistribution of fat. That is, fat is deposited on the face and the shoulder region. This is important because we are going to study certain abnormalities today. So, these things you should know. Effect on mineral metabolism, it causes retention of sodium, it causes excretion of potassium. That is because of the slight mineralocorticoid activity. In short, cortisol is catabolic, it is diabetogenic, and it is a lipolytic hormone. So these three keywords all of you must know before we proceed with today's lecture. Also, we had seen action on the various systems like nervous system, that is important in for awakening response. So increase in cortisol is seen normally before awakening. It is also concerned with mood changes and insomnia. It causes depression of lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils. However, it causes increase in platelet count and also RBC count. The reason is unknown, but one reason definitely it is required for erythropoiesis. So that is one reason why RBC count increases. On bones, it causes decrease in the bones formation and increase in the bone resorption. So in effect, it will also lead to increase in some calcium levels in the ECF plasma. On CVS, it maintains tone of blood vessels along with adrenaline and noradrenaline. It causes increase in blood pressure while it inhibits collagen synthesis and wound healing. So this effect also you should know before we move on to the today's lecture. On skeletal muscle, it causes decreases utilization of glucose. It decreases sensitivity to insulin. Also, it can cause breakdown of the muscle protein that we have already studied. It increases appetite, it increases lipogenesis. In many cases, it also causes an increase in the excretion or secretion of acidic contents in the GIT, as well as there is decrease in the mucosal secretions. So therefore, it can also lead to ulcers in excessive glucocorticoid secretion conditions. In lungs, it plays a role in production of surfactant that you all know. It is a stabilizer of homeostasis and it is helpful in mental or physical stress like injuries or diseases. Now, mechanism of action, we all know that rise in ACTH levels cause rise in cortisol. These glucocorticoids help other hormones to maintain homeostasis by maintaining BP, causing high blood sugar level, amino acids, and free fatty acids. All in all, in short term, it is a life-saving drug. We are also seeing the anti-inflammatory actions of glucocorticoids to tissue reaction due to infection and physical injury. In pharmacological doses, it inhibits proliferation of lymphocytes and monocytes, decreases production of prostaglandins, interleukins. All these factors will decrease the immune response. It also will decrease capillary permeability, and therefore it will also lead to decrease in any edema or swelling. In pharmacological doses, it causes stabilization of the lysosomal membrane. Thus, it decreases release of hydrolytic enzymes. It decreases migration of leukocytes to the site. It also causes decrease in collagen formation and proliferation of fibroblasts, which leads to decrease in the scar formation. So these are the various anti-inflammatory actions in pharmacological doses. We had seen that it is justified to use glucocorticoids in spite of various adverse effects in cases of severe or life-threatening conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or glomerulonephritis, where the adverse reactions are very severe. So to overcome that, we have to give glucocorticoids immediately. However, remember, it causes a deceptive impression of improvement. That means it may or may not cure the main actual cause, but definitely to tide over any acute crisis, action is effective. Also, in immunosuppressive actions, like say, if you want to give a transplant of a particular organ, say a kidney transplant, or in case of allergy or hypersensitivity, or in autoimmune disease, any immune response is not desirable. In such cases, to suppress the immune response, we have to give glucocorticoids. Therefore, it is also used in conditions like bronchial asthma, serum sickness, and rheumatoid arthritis. It also has got anti-allergic reaction because it decreases the circulating eosinophils, decreases basophils in circulation, decreases histamine release, reduces inflammation associated with allergy, and it is used in diseases like bronchial asthma. So all in all, we had seen which are the various actions of these glucocorticoids in various systems. All of you must recall these actions because we are going to study certain abnormalities today. So you should know what cortisol causes in normal doses and what it will cause when the levels of cortisol will increase or when the level of cortisol will decrease. We had also seen how this glucocorticoid secretion is regulated by the hypothalamic feedback mechanism. We had seen that how the concentration of this cortisol increases during the day, how it is highest in the morning and how it decreases throughout the day. Now today we will come to the actual topic. Now as we know that these adrenal androgens, they are secreted by zona reticularis mainly and to small extent even by zona fasciculata. Dehydroepiandrosterone sulfate is converted to testosterone at periphery, while androstenedione, which is one more adrenal androgen, is converted to estrogen and testosterone in circulation. Now, these adrenal androgens are important source of estrogen in men and in postmenopausal women. And therefore, this secretion of adrenal androgens, it decreases as the age advances. Now, we had seen the pathway of synthesis for adrenal androgens in the last lecture as well. Just to revise quickly the steps of synthesis of these adrenal androgens. So, of course, we had seen that it is secreted mainly by the zona reticularis. So, what is the steps in the formation or the synthesis of adrenal androgens? So, this cholesterol is converted to pregnenolone. It's converted by the 17th alpha hydroxylase enzyme to 17 hydroxypregnenolone. This 17-hydroxypregnenolone is then converted to dehydroepiandrosterone. This pregnenolone is also converted to progesterone, and this progesterone again under the influence of same enzyme is converted to 17-hydroxyprogesterone. This 17-hydroxyprogesterone by this enzyme 1720 lyase is converted to androstenedione. Also, this D-epihydrosterone is converted to androstenedione. So these are the basic steps in the synthesis of adrenal androgens. So if you are asked a question only on the adrenal androgens, remember you have to show only this pathway. There is no need to show the chemical structure of various compounds. Just show the various main compounds like cholesterol, pregnenolone. If you can remember the enzymes, well and good. But definitely you have to show all these byproducts and which are the precursors. Now we had seen that DHEA is converted to testosterone at periphery, while androstenedione is converted to estrogen as well as testosterone in circulation. So what are the actions of these adrenal androgens? Now these actions are important mainly in females because there is little masculinizing effect when the secretion of adrenal androgens is normal in females. However, there will be certain disorders where there will be excess secretion which might lead to appreciable masculinization effect in case of females. This adrenal androgens, it stimulates RBC production, it causes protein synthesis, and it helps in growth. In females, it has got significant anabolic effect. Remember this thing. In females, it has got significant anabolic effect, and therefore it leads to a more masculinizing effect in case of females. Now, action is slightly lesser important in males because in males, there is preponderance of a hormone known as testosterone. Therefore, any excess secretion of adrenal androgens, any bad effects of this excess secretion of adrenal androgens will be more evident in case of females rather than in males. Now, how these adrenal androgens are secreted? Again, it is secreted mainly by our ACTH, is secreted by the pituitary. Also, stress and emotions which stimulate ACTH can secondarily lead to increase in adrenal androgen secretion. Now, as I told you, in adult males, increase in secretion may not be obvious because it causes a masculinizing effect, so it is not very evident in adult males. However, in pre-adolescent boys, that means the boys who have not attained puberty, in whom secondary sexual characters have not appeared, if in such boys, before they attain puberty, if there is an increase in the secretion of adrenal androgens, then it will lead to a condition known as precocious puberty. If the condition is known as precocious puberty, that means the puberty, the secondary sexual characters appear early as compared to the normal subjects. What will the effects on females? It will cause masculinization or acne or hirsutism, that is growth of hair on the face especially. We will be seeing the effect of adrenal androgens excess secretion when we study the further abnormalities. Right now, the first hormone that we had studied was aldosterone. Now let us see if a particular individual suffers from hyperaldosteronism. What will be the effect? There is one condition known as primary aldosteronism, which is also known as Conn's syndrome. All of you must know synonym for primary aldosteronism. You can be asked a short note on primary aldosteronism or write a short note on Conn's syndrome. So they are the synonyms. What is that? There is a tumor of zona glomerulosa like adrenal adenoma, or there can be hyperplasia of zona glomerulosa. Hyperplasia means there is proliferation of cells of zona glomerulosa. Then there is one more condition known as secondary aldosteronism. There is hypersecretion of aldosterone when secondary to excess renin secretion. Remember this. So this can be seen in congestive cardiac failure, renin secreting tumor of kidney, liver cirrhosis, renal diseases like nephrotic syndrome. Now, what is the actual pathophysiology? Why all these conditions can lead to hypersecretion of aldosterone? Now, we had already studied the stimuli for secretion of aldosterone, if you remember. So, either decrease in the renal blood flow or perfusion pressure leads to secretion of renin, where from JG cells, or in certain conditions like liver cirrhosis, there can be decreased inactivation of renin. So all in all, this increase in the renin will cause more secretion of aldosterone, and this secondarily increased secretion of aldosterone can lead to this secondary aldosteronism. So what are the signs and symptoms of hyperaldosteronism? There will be hypokalemia. Do you agree? Now we had seen in the normal action, it causes increase in the reabsorption of sodium, while it will cause increase in the excretion of potassium, isn't it? And therefore, in case of hyperaldosteronism, there will be hypokalemia. What will hypokalemia cause? Hypokalemia depresses the transmission of action potential along the nerves and causes extreme weakness and transient muscle paralysis. Why hypokalemia depresses transmission of action potential? Now, if you go to the very basic physiology, you must remember that resting membrane potential is mainly regulated by which ion? It is potassium. It is not sodium. We are under the impression that concentration of sodium is more in the ECF, therefore it must be contributing more to the resting membrane potential. Not at all. In fact, the boss in the potassium is the boss as far as functional concentration or the functions of ions is concerned. Although the concentration of potassium in the extracellular fluid is in the range of say 3.8 to 4.2 milliequivalents per liter, but it is the boss ion functionally. It will cause depression of transmission of action potential when there is decrease in the potassium concentration. Hypokalemia also causes damage to the kidney and concentrating function is lost, leading to condition called polyuria. Polyuria means increase in the urinary output. Of course, now potassium is excreted, but at the same time, sodium will be absorbed in more amount because we had seen the normal action, it causes increase in the reabsorption of sodium. But in excess secretion of aldosterone, there will be hypertension. Why? Due to sodium retention. And when sodium is reabsorbed, secondarily along with it, water is also reabsorbed, leading to rise in the ECF volume. Excretion of hydrogen ions is increased, leading to acidic urine and metabolic alkalosis. So we had also seen this condition that it will lead to metabolic alkalosis because of excretion of excess hydrogen ions. And this metabolic alkalosis might precipitate tetany. Now, what is tetany? We have already studied in the lecture on parathyroid, how this metabolic alkalosis leads to tetany. Now, since there is increase in the retention of sodium and water and increase in the ECF volume, there will also be edema. So this patient will also present with edema over the various body parts. Now, there will be a low plasma renin due to negative feedback of excess aldosterone. So if you measure the plasma renin of this particular patient, there will be low plasma renin. So these are the various signs and symptoms of hyperaldosteronism. How will you treat the condition? Now it will depend upon whether the condition is primary or whether the condition is secondary. So in primary aldosteronism, if you take a CT scan of the patient and if you find some adenoma, then in the UHG also in the abdomen, if you come to a conclusion that the person is having adenoma, then you can cause surgical removal of adenoma and it will cure primary aldosteronism. There are certain potassium sparing diuretics. They are like spironolactone. There are various potassium sparing diuretics, but there are certain important like spironolactone which will preserve your potassium, and therefore any bad effects because of decrease in potassium will be taken care of. Of course, if it is secondary aldosteronism, say congestive cardiac failure or liver cirrhosis, etc., now here you have to treat the primary cause. When you treat the primary cause, when it gets cured, this secondary aldosteronism will automatically get cured. So this is as far as the treatment part of hyperaldosteronism. Now, very important condition. One is known as Cushing's syndrome. It was described by a scientist called Harvey Cushing from USA. There is increased concentration of cortisol in the blood. So what is the cause? Now, the concentration of cortisol in blood can be because of ACTH or because of non-ACTH causes. ACTH dependent is corticotroph tumor of the anterior pituitary. So the cells which are secreting ACTH, there is the tumor of those particular cells. Therefore, ACTH production will be increasing, which will secondarily lead to increase in the cortisol concentration. There can be ectopic ACTH secretion. For example, in certain lung tumors, the ACTH can be secreted not from the actual anterior pituitary, but from certain other sites, and therefore it will lead to a secondary hypersecretion of ACTH. Then what is non-ACTH dependent Cushing syndrome? There is cortisol secreting tumor in the adrenal cortex itself. So here the pituitary or any ectopic focus is not at fault. Here, who is at fault? It is the adrenal cortex. So this adrenal adenoma, cortisol secreting tumor, which will lead to increase in the ACTH secretion. Also, it will lead to increase in the secretion of cortisol. Also, iatrogenic. Iatrogenic means if you give something from outside for treatment purposes. If you give cortisol from outside and it is given in large doses, it can also lead secondarily to Cushing syndrome if this dosage is continued for long periods of time. Now moving on to the Cushing's syndrome, what are the various features? So here are the various clinical features of Cushing syndrome. First is abdominal obesity, typical abdominal obesity, but this obesity or the fat deposition is not seen over the limbs. So it spares the limbs. The face appears like a moon, like it is a round edematous face having acne and hirsutism. There can be buffalo hump. Buffalo hump means there is deposition of fat in the on the upper part of your back or in the neck region. So just like a hump which is present on the buffalo's back, typical that buffalo type of hump will be present on the person's back who is suffering from Cushing syndrome. Now, because of abdominal fat, what is going to happen? There will be stretching and rupture of collagen in the subcutaneous tissue, forming reddish purplish striae on the abdomen, which will be typically seen because of excess abdominal fat. So this abdominal reddish striae is also one of the pathognomonic feature of Cushing syndrome. In females, there will be certain menstrual irregularities. Of course, as I had told you that it is abdominal obesity, so the extremities appear thin. Now we had seen that whenever cortisol is in excess, it will lead to protein catabolism. So therefore, it will cause catabolism, especially in the proximal limb muscle, leading to proximal limb muscle wasting. The skin will be thin like paper, and the subcutaneous tissue also will be thin. There will be increased blood sugar level. Now we had seen what is the effect of cortisol on the carbohydrate metabolism, like gluconeogenesis, increase in the glycogen storage, how it increases the insulin resistance. So in spite of increasing the blood sugar level, insulin resistance is also there. Therefore, it will lead to a condition known as adrenal diabetes. It will lead to hypercalcemia, calciuria, and osteoporosis. I had told you that it will lead to increase in the osteoporosis, and therefore there will be easy and multiple fractures. Because of suppression of lymphocytes, in this particular patient, the immunity levels will be low, of course, and therefore also there will be poor wound healing, as you can see in this particular diagram as well. Okay, so these are the various features. Now, cortisol has also got some mineralocorticoid actions, so it will secondarily lead to hypertension, potassium depletion, and because of potassium depletion, there will be decrease in the action potentials generated in the nerves, which will secondarily lead to muscle weakness. Mild edema will be present because of retention of sodium and water. This patient can also suffer from mood changes like euphoria. He can become elated at one point, but there can be depression even in many patients and psychosis. I had told you it leads to increase in the secretion of gastric acids, as well as there is decrease in the secretion of mucosal secretions. Therefore, it will secondarily lead to peptic ulceration. There will be acne and hirsutism due to androgen excess as well in some patients. So this was the first case which was described by Harvey in 1912. Typically, you can note the typical centripetal distribution of the fat. However, the limbs are pretty thin as compared to the fat. There is some deposition of fat in this upper back region known as buffalo hump. Now let us have a look at some of the patients who are suffering from Cushing syndrome. Now this is one lady who was suffering from Cushing syndrome. Take a look at her facial appearance. This is like appearance like a round moon face before treatment. Then she was giving treatment, and after treatment, the same lady looked like this. So the see the facial edema is gone now. Okay. So after treatment and before treatment, so this is a one picture of Cushing syndrome which is present in Guyton. One more patient of Cushing syndrome, typical moon-like face, and this central abdominal obesity is pretty evident. Also, certain abdominal striae can also be seen in this particular patient because of the excessive stretching of the skin. In this particular patient, this abdominal striae are pretty evident. There is pendular abdomen and rupture of the thin skin due to stretching. So such purplish striae over the abdomen because of the excessive abdominal fat is also pathognomonic of Cushing syndrome. Now this buffalo hump actually not very clearly seen because of his this upper limb, but in this particular patient, the buffalo hump is present over the upper back. There will be increase in the gastric acid secretions. At the same time, there will be decrease in the proliferation of gastric mucosal cells, and it will lead to certain such ulcerations. There is breach in the continuity of the epithelium of the gastric mucosa, which will lead to this ulceration. This is known as peptic ulceration, also seen in many patients of Cushing's syndrome. Now, how to treat? Now, we had seen one lady before and after treatment. So, how to treat Cushing syndrome? So, basically, you have to treat the cause. Removal of adrenal or pituitary tumor. So, if the tumor belongs to pituitary, increase in the SATS secretion, then you have to remove the pituitary tumor. However, if the cause is tumor of the adrenal, that is the adrenal adenoma, then you have to remove the adrenal tumor. Irradiation. And after the surgical intervention, in certain patients, you can just use this chemotherapy to cause irradiation. And therefore, whatever the cancerous cells or malignant cells are remaining, you can destroy them by using this radiotherapy. There are certain drugs which can be used in Cushing syndrome. There are certain steroid synthesis blockers like metapyrone or ketoconazole. There are certain drugs which inhibit ACTH secretion like serotonin antagonist. You will be learning about all this, mainly about all these drugs in the second year, but you should know what is the line of treatment of Cushing syndrome. Now, in severe cases where the adrenal tumor is present on both the glands, then you have to take a call. So, in certain conditions, you have to use a a surgical intervention like bilateral partial adrenalectomy. That means some part of adrenal gland on both the sides have to be removed. So, this is the basic line of treatment of Cushing syndrome. Now, there is one more important condition known as Addison's disease. Now, this was described by Mr. Thomas Addison. In this condition, most often there is bilateral destruction of the adrenal cortex. So, the hormones released by the adrenal cortex will be lesser. Here, all the three layers are destroyed. So, signs and symptoms due to deficiency of adrenocortical hormones and increased ACTH are pretty evident. If all these layers are destroyed, then what is going to happen? The concentration of the various adrenocortical hormones is going to dip, and therefore there will be secondarily rise in ACTH. Okay, so these are the signs and symptoms are mainly concerned with deficiency of adrenocortical hormones as well as increase in ACTH. So basically, what is the cause of this Addison disease? Why the various layers are destroyed? Number one, autoimmune disease. There are certain autoantibodies against the adrenocortical cells itself. This can lead to Addison's disease. There can be tuberculosis of adrenal cortex. There can be tumors of the adrenal cortex. Now, in the Cushing syndrome, we had seen that there was one tumor, that is adrenal adenoma, which was actually increasing the secretion of adrenal of cortisol. However, there are certain tumors like adenocarcinoma which actually destroy the adrenal cortex itself, leading to Addison's disease. Now, in certain conditions, this ACTH secretion from the pituitary will be at fault. So, at fault is definitely the anterior pituitary in certain conditions. There can be congenital enzymatic defects as well in certain patients. So, the congenital enzymatic defects, we had seen the various pathway for formation of cortisol and various other aldosterone and various other hormones. If there is certain enzymatic defect in the synthesis of these various hormones, it can also lead to Addison disease. So autoimmune conditions, tuberculosis, adenocarcinoma, decreased ACTH secretion from anterior pituitary, and congenital enzymatic defects. So these are some of the primary causes which can lead to Addison's disease. What are the features in Addison's disease? Okay. Now there is pigmentation of the skin and the mucous membrane. This raised ACTH, which is secondary to decrease in the adrenocortical hormones, it stimulates melanocytes, causing deposition of melanin over where lips, nipples, skin creases, pressure points, and buccal mucosa. Now, if you recollect, any condition which will increase the ACTH production will lead to increase in the formation of POMC, that is pro-opiomelanocortin, and the secondary hormones like MSH will also increase. Now there are two schools of thoughts. There's some say that because of increase in the MSH there is pigmentation, while some say that the main reason for pigmentation is increase in the ACTH secretion itself. This increase in the ACTH itself stimulates the melanocytes, causing deposition of melanin. So the culprit can be either ACTH, which itself causes increase in the pigmentation, or it can be secondarily to increase in the MSH levels. There is dizziness and fainting due to hypoglycemia in fasting state. As you remember, cortisol increases the blood sugar level. In fact, it will also cause increase in the glucose synthesis as well as glycogen storage. However, if this cortisol is decreased, there will be hypoglycemia, especially in fasting state. Mobilization of proteins and fats is reduced. Yes, we have already seen that cortisol is concerned mainly with mobilization of amino acids as well as it is concerned with lipolysis. So whenever there is decrease in the cortisol, there will be mobilization of proteins and fats will be reduced. There will be intolerance to stress and infection because it is one of the major actions of cortisol. Secondarily, there will be associated mineralocorticoid deficiency, which will lead to hypotension, hyponatremia, and hyperkalemia. So basically, these are the various features that can be seen in the Addison's disease. There is irritability and depression. There is neutrophilia and eosinophilia. There is increase in the neutrophils as well as eosinophil counts. There can be weakness and fatigue. There is weight loss. There is decreased responsiveness to circulating catecholamines. And there is decrease in the secretion of gastric acid, which is known as hypochlorhydria. So these are some of the other features in Addison's disease. Now there is one more term which is known as Addisonian crisis. This Addisonian crisis, it is precipitated by stress. So what are these features of this Addisonian crisis in Addison's disease? These patients will be having high fever. They will be having increase in the heart rate, that is tachycardia. There will be cramps. There will be postural dizziness as soon as the patient stands from a sitting position. There can be certain fainting attacks as well. The patient can suffer from vomiting, abdominal pain. There will be sodium depletion. There will be dehydration. There will be an increase in the blood urea. So all these are features of Addisonian crisis, which is seen in Addison's disease in certain patients of Addison's disease. So all these features you must know. So now let us have a look at some of the patients of Addison's disease. I told you there is pigmentation of these palms as well as face. There can be pigmentation of the tongue and cheek. There is pigmentation of these gums as well as ears. Some pigmentation is seen in the ear lobules as well. So basically, these are the typical features of a patient who is suffering from Addison's disease. Now coming to the adrenogenital syndrome. Okay, now we had seen in today's lecture that these adrenal androgens are secreted by the inner layer. So if these androgens are secreted in excessive amount, it will lead to a condition known as adrenogenital syndrome. So there are intense masculinizing effects throughout the body. In females, viral characteristics develop. So what are the viral characteristics in females? So growth of a beard, the voice in the females can be deeper like males. Sometimes the females can also suffer from baldness. Now there will be masculine distribution type of hair on the body and pubis. Sometimes the growth of the clitoris can be increased to resemble penis. So all in all, it will give you a typical masculine effect in case of females. Now deposition of proteins, I had told you that androgens have got anabolic effect. So this deposition of proteins in the skin and the muscles give typical masculine characteristics. So in females, all these embarrassing features can develop in this condition known as adrenogenital syndrome. Now, in prepubertal males, that is in males who have yet to attain the puberty, the same viral characteristics can develop. There is a rapid development of male sexual organs in prepubertal males. Now, these viralizing characteristics, which are a feature of adrenal androgens, they normally are obscured by the normal viralizing characteristics of the testosterone, which are secreted by the testes. So, the diagnosis of adrenogenital syndrome in males is very difficult. Okay, so the diagnosis is mainly on the basis of clinical suspicion, and then to confirm the diagnosis, you have to measure excretion of 17 phytosteroids in the urine, which are derived from androgens, and the concentration in the urine may be 10 to 15 times the norm. So all of you must know these features about the adrenogenital syndrome. Now we'll be just seeing a couple of slides of adrenal medulla. This adrenal medulla or the neurotransmitters secreted by it or the hormones secreted by it will be mainly covered in when you study the autonomic nervous system and other lectures on CNS. So what is the function of adrenal medulla? As you can see in this particular cut section, this inner is the adrenal medulla. It is a large sympathetic ganglion. When stimulated, it causes release of epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood. It stimulates cardiovascular function and metabolic rate and helps the body deal with stress. So most of us are acquainted with features of epinephrine and norepinephrine. So I will not go too much into the details of this adrenal medulla. So what are the basic effects on autonomic nervous system on the organs? On the eye, it will cause pupillary dilatation. On heart, it increases the rate and contractility. We have studied about this. On the heart, on the SC node, it increases the permeability of sodium as well as calcium. And because of this, there is increase in the rate. There is increase in contractility because secondary to increase in the intercellular calcium. So I will not go too much into the details of this. On blood vessels, this hormones released by the adrenal medulla, they cause vasoconstriction. On lungs, they cause bronchodilation. So in status asthmaticus, that means a severe case of asthma, it can be used in a very graded manner. It stimulates the sweat glands. On the gastrointestinal tract, it decreases the peristalsis. So I will not go too much into the details of adrenal medulla. It will be covered in the other lectures on CNS. Now, adrenal cortex function test. So, as far as your MUH's curriculum is concerned, they have added this one more thing, that is functions of the adrenal cortex. It is mainly, I would say, it is mainly a postgraduate question, but since it is included in the UG curriculum, it can be asked to you. So, we will see which are the various adrenal cortex function tests. So, of course, if you because you have any suspicion on clinical examination that a particular patient has got some problems with the adrenal cortex, so first you can do the blood examination. Now there are various tests like fluorescence test, ACTH test, metairopone test, and dexamethasone suppression test. These are all adrenal cortical function tests. So these are given in your book, textbook of I think Jain. So you can refer Jain for details of all these tests. So we'll just go through all these tests. So first is blood examination. So we know what is the function of this cortisol on these various lymphocytes and monocytes. So in excess secretion, what it will cause? When glucocorticoid secretion increases, what do you think? It will be, of course, lymphopenia. Yes. Maybe monocytopenia. Yes. So it will be lymphocytopenia because it causes decrease in the formation of lymphocytes. Second is monocytopenia. There will be decrease in the eosinophil count, decrease in the basophil count. However, we have seen that cortisol is required for normal erythropoiesis. So in such patients, there will be an increase in the RBC count as well as there will be an increase in the platelet count. So whenever the glucocorticoid secretion increases, it will cause a depression of certain cells like lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, and basophils, while it will increase RBCs as well as platelets. Now this fluorescence test. So on the left hand side of this table, you have got the parameter: plasma cortisol, 24-hour urine 17 hydroxysteroids, and 24-hour urine 17 ketosteroids. So these are the normal levels of plasma cortisol, 10 to 25 micrograms per deciliter. So in conditions of adrenal deficiency, like in Addison's disease, there will be decrease in the plasma cortisol level. While in Cushing's syndrome, there will be adrenal hypertension. So there will be an increase in the cortisol level. The second parameters, 24-hour urine, 17 hydroxycorticosteroids. The normal level is, they say it is 3 to 7 milligrams per gram of creatinine. So it will be decreased in adrenal insufficiency, while it will be increased in adrenal hyperfunction. 24-hour urine 17 ketosteroids. The normal level is 7 to 12 milligrams per grams of creatinine. In adrenal deficiency, this will also increase, while in adrenal hyperfunction, this will increase. So even if you don't remember the normal values of all this, doesn't matter. You should at least know in which condition they are going to decrease and in which condition they are going to increase. Okay. So this is one test, that is fluorescence test. There is one more test known as ACTH test. So in this test, 5 units of ACTH are given intravenously per hour for how much duration? For 8 hours. Then you have to collect blood after 1 hour and after 8 hours. You also need to collect 24 hours urine. Okay. Now here we are giving ACTH intravenously. So normally, what do you think? What will happen to the cortisol level or any other adrenocortical levels? Normally, there should be an increase in the secretion or the levels of all these hormones. So let us find out how to interpret this test. So in normal subjects, after 1 hour of ACTH injection, the plasma cortisol in micrograms per deciliter should be 15 to 30. Okay, and after 8 hours of ACTH injection, the plasma cortisol should be about 15 to 80 micrograms per deciliter. If the cortisol is not secreted in this up to this particular level, what does that mean? Even after giving ACTH, cortisol is not getting secreted. That means the adrenal gland is at fault, isn't it? In spite of giving ACTH from externally, if the cortisol increase in cortisol doesn't happen, that means the cause of decreased cortisol levels is not pituitary, but it is actually the adrenal gland itself. Now this, if when you collect this 24 urinary 24 hours, what things you have to see? You have to see 17 hydroxysteroids and 17 ketosteroids. So the concentration of this should be 5 to 20 milligrams per gram of creatinine and 10 to 30. So this concentration should be more. If the concentration is lesser than that, that means the organ which is at fault is not pituitary, but it is the adrenal gland itself. Now this one more test is known as meteropon test. Now this meteropon is a drug which is concerned with inhibition of 11 beta hydroxylase enzyme. Okay, so basically this test is used to estimate pituitary ACTH reserve. Now this meteropon, I told you, it inhibits the enzyme 11 beta hydroxylase, and I had told you in the very beginning, concentrate on this enzyme. It is required for conversion or formation of cortisol. Okay, if this enzyme is inhibited by any particular drug like metapyron, what is going to happen? So what is the procedure in this test? You have to give meteropon IV. How much? 10 milligrams per kg of body weight at 4 hourly interval. That means in 24 hours, you have to give 6 such doses. So normally, what do you expect in a normal person? The plasma cortisol level should decrease to a agreed. So the plasma cortisol level is going to decrease. CRH, ACTH, and 11-deoxycortisol levels will increase. Do you agree with me on this thing? Why CRH should increase? Because now the cortisol has decreased. Why ACTH should increase? Again, the same reason. The cortisol has decreased. Therefore, by feedback mechanism, the concentration of corticotropin releasing hormone or factor and ACTH, they will increase. Also, this 11-deoxycortisol levels will also increase, which is the product before this 11 beta hydroxylase enzyme it acts. So this 11-deoxycortisol levels will also increase. 70 hydroxysteroids increase to 6 to 14 milligrams per gram of creatinine because this 17 OHCase is the precursor of corticosteroid. 17 ketosteroid increases to double than normal. Why? Because decrease in plasma cortisol will increase ACTH secretion, which increases the sex hormone synthesis. So in a normal subject, you should find decrease in the plasma cortisol, increase in CRH, ACTH, and 11-deoxycortisol level, increase in 70 hydroxysteroids and 17 ketosteroids. So these are the findings in a normal subject. Now, how to interpret further? If 11-deoxycortisol levels do not rise and remains less than 7 micrograms per deciliter, while ACTH is increasing. Okay, so ACTH is increasing, but 11-deoxycortisol levels, which that is the formation of cortisol, one of the precursor of cortisol formation, it does not increase. That means who is at fault? The pituitary is not at fault. Then who is at fault? The organ is which is at fault is adrenal gland itself. See, CRH is increasing, ACTH is increasing. In spite of that, 11-deoxycortisol levels are not increasing. That means your adrenal gland is at fault. It is incapable of producing adrenal or this cortisol hormone level. Second possibility, if neither 11-deoxycortisol levels nor ACTH rise, then who is at fault? ACTH is also not increasing. That means either your CRH is at fault, CRH is released by hypothalamus, or your pituitary glands are not secreting ACTH in spite of the feedback mechanism. Therefore, if neither 11-deoxycortisol levels nor ACTH levels they rise, then it is pretty suggestive of impaired hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis because of fault of either pituitary or hypothalamus. Now, this test, Metairo-Poon test, might help in verifying the cause of Cushing syndrome. Most patients with pituitary dysfunction or pituitary microadenoma will increase ACTH secretion in response to Metairo-Poon. Okay, so all of you, can you judge what is going to happen? What is happening? Most patients with pituitary dysfunction or pituitary microadenoma will increase ACTH secretion in response to Metairo-Poon, while most ectopic ACTH producing tumors will not. Okay, so in this way you can interpret this Metairo-Poon test, which is one of the tests for adrenal cortex function. There is one more test known as dexamethasone suppression test. We had seen that dexamethasone is one of the glucocorticoids. So if this dexamethasone is given, how much? 5 milligrams at 6-hour interval, that is 4 doses are given. What is going to happen now? In normal subjects, plasma ACTH decreases to 0 level. Do you agree with this? Now, because the concentration of your glucocorticoids has increased, the plasma ACTH, there is feedback inhibition of release of ACTH from the anteripituitary as well as from the hypothalamus. No CRH is released. Therefore, this plasma ACTH secretion will decrease to 0. Plasma cortisol also decreases to 5 micrograms per deciliters. Urine 17 hydroxycorticosteroids will also decrease. 17 urine 17 ketosteroids will also decrease. This is in normal subjects. Okay. In adrenal tumor, what is going to happen? ACTH will decrease because of the feedback inhibition, but glucocorticoids increase markedly. That means the gland which is at fault is adrenal gland. In spite of giving dexamethasone, in spite of in spite of suppression of ACTH, still the glucocorticoids are increasing. That means there is definitely a tumor of adrenal gland. However, in ectopic ACTH production, both ACTH as well as glucocorticoids, they increase markedly. Okay, so remember this. In this way, this dexamethasone suppression test can be interpreted. So before I proceed, just remember that all these tests are given in jail. You can just read out the jail. I will say that there is no need to remember the normal values of 17 hydroxysteroid or ketosteroid. Even if you can remember increase and decrease in particular levels of particular byproduct, that is also enough. So what are the various questions that can be asked to you on this particular topic? Let us see. Excessive secretion of glucocorticoids results in all except, this was asked in one of the exams, hypertension, delayed wound healing, thick skin, and demineralization of the bone. So what can be the likely answer? So just think for a while. Hypertension, yes. Delayed wound healing, yes. Demineralization of the bone, yes. Thick skin, no. I told you it will lead to paper-like skin in Cushing syndrome. So the wrong answer or the right response in this particular MCQ is thick skin. During aldosterone deficiency, read it twice. During aldosterone deficiency, there is likely to be a fall in what? Urine volume, yes. Blood volume, plasma potassium level, or there can be a fall in blood viscosity. So what is the right answer in aldosterone deficiency? There is likely to be a fall in which parameter? Yes, blood volume. There will not be any fall in the blood volume. There is, I should say sorry, there is likely to be a fall in blood volume. Why blood volume should fall? We had seen that aldosterone is mainly concerned with reabsorption of sodium and water. So when there is aldosterone deficiency, there will be likely to be a fall in blood volume. Short answer questions. Now this is a territory which we cannot actually judge what kind of short answer questions will be set at the university level. But remember, maybe some of the questions that can be framed on this topic are clinical features in Cushing's syndrome. Same thing. Clinical features in Addison's disease. What is Addisonian crisis? Describe the clinical features. Actions of adrenal androgens. Pathophysiology of Conn's syndrome. So for 2 marks, such type of questions can be asked to you in your exams. Some of the short notes which can be asked to you. Very favorite is Cushing syndrome and Addison's disease. A very favorite from long time. So you are very much likely to get either a MCQ or a short note or a long question which will comprise Cushing syndrome or Addison's disease. This is a very hot favorite as far as examiners are concerned. Conn syndrome can be asked to you as a short note. So primary aldosteronism, various bad effects of aldosterone, you should be able to enumerate what should be the treatment, etc. Adrenal androgens can be asked to you as a short note. Long questions. Maybe describe synthesis and actions of aldosterone. Add a note on hyperaldosteronism. So you have to map out the entire chart of synthesis of that aldosterone. No need to write the chemical structure. Just remember the products. If you can remember the various enzymes in between, well and good. If you don't remember, doesn't matter. You should be able to remember the the previous products before that lead to the formation of aldosterone. Actions of aldosterone on various systems, like say renal system, GIT, sweat glands, etc., blood volume. All of you should be able to tell the actions of aldosterone. Add a note on hyperaldosteronism. So you have to mention both primary as well as secondary hyperaldosteronism. That means कौन syndrome भी आपको बोलना है and secondary hyperaldosteronism भी आपको बोलना है. Second long question can be asked, describe synthesis and action of cortisol. Add a note on Cushing syndrome and Addison's disease. I have already told you, very hot favorite questions, Cushing syndrome and Addison's disease. So all in all, in today's lecture, we have revisited the normal actions of cortisol and aldosterone. We have also seen what will happen if there is an excessive secretion of these hormones like cortisol, aldosterone, as well as adrenal androgens, and what will be the effect of deficiency of this hormone. So which are the various clinical features of various hormones in case of excess secretion as well as in less secretion. We have already also seen how to treat the condition and how to estimate the adrenal cortical functions using various tests. So all of you must read all these questions. Mainly from Guyton and Hall, there is chapter 91 on adrenal cortex as well as chapter 92 adrenal medulla. Okay, so these two chapters you must read. Also for adrenal cortical function test, you have to go to Jain. Okay, so you have to go to Jain and read about the adrenal cortical function tests. So thank you all of you for this. So here we conclude the adrenal cortex. So the first MBBS students now must fill the feedback form, and this is mandatory for only for first MBBS students. So thank you, students. I will be catching up with you in next week. Thank you.